I would like to thank Debbie Block, this great friend of ours, also the daughter, first daughter, and only daughter of our friend Bob. And so now we're here to learn from her as a daughter. How could she, what she learned from her father, and how did her personal life with her father and her family helped her and had related to her professional experiences as an inventor and an innovator, an entrepreneurial woman. And so let's thank Debbie
Thank
for
you.
being here with us.
Thank you very much.
And so please tell us a little bit of your story with your father and your family, and what were the important and most meaningful aspects that you would learn and that would probably relate to your professional side.
Okay, well, some of my experiences dealt with working directly with my father, and it's always a difficult time when you are working with a family member, but because there's a lot of higher expectations. But it was a very good time. He was always pushing and creating, and it kept me in that loop to also train me to push and to create and to innovate. Even when I was a kid, growing up with different experiences like flying and horseback riding and scuba diving, those were all experiences that allowed me to know that I could take on something that was uncomfortable or new, and I could start enjoying it and learn it and grow from it. So those experiences, just even with that, were incredibly important to my development as an adult and in the business world on my own.
That's great. And how about things like, for example, he would bring some important aspects like trust, building trust, humor, and love, everything you do from heart, from inside, outside, and wisdom and knowledge. And so, looking, if you look, the strategy also of everything's connected to everything, and how do you would how I would say the level of how you're applying that into your life
I think a
and
lot
to
of
me.
that has to do with community responsibility, and I think that that's really important. It's something that has always weighed, as a guide to what I do. Originally, well, back when back in the 80s, I got into the travel business. We had a lot of experience traveling, and so it allowed me to go into the travel industry, which I stayed in for about 20 years. And I think that that was important because it allowed me to help people, one, enjoy vacations, give families time together. I understood how important that was, and then also addressing the needs of business travelers, and even just as important, companies that would have their staff traveling. So my responsibility to that companies was also very important in keeping those things in mind. So one of the things that I know, I was able to draw from my experiences was keeping an eye on the big picture. There's not always one thing to focus on, and so even just in the travel business, for example, it's you have to focus on the person as well as the company, and you have to engage all of that. In my current business that I have, I own a shooting range and a gun store, and I didn't have any experience growing up as with firearms, so that's been a bit of a push for me. But again, allowing me to work outside my comfort zone through my experiences with my dad has allowed me to actually do this. I'm a 100% owner of my business, and we have a beautiful facility. One of the things too that is really important that I've learned from my dad is relationships. And bringing in other people to help you accomplish what your goals are. With the firearms business, it was a community responsibility decision for me in part because I as a woman who had no experience, felt we needed more opportunities for training that could relate more comfortably to women that didn't have experience. And I saw a big hole in that area in the training that was available to us. And also it was becoming more and more difficult to find safe places to shoot and go out and practice. So one of my goals and reasons for starting this was to give the community a facility that was safe and comfortable and encouraging for all to do that. The other thing that was important to me was, like I said, bringing in experts. Since I didn't have that, allowing me to bring in experts that would help me to grow this business to where it is. My team is amazing, and there's not one person that's more important than the other, but having my team has really helped us to become what we are today, which I'm very, very proud of. And I'm real excited about what we've been able to do. I think this has been the biggest project that I've ever done, financially, as well as going outside my comfort level. The travel business, I traveled, so that was something that I was comfortable with and I understood. But getting into the firearms business, that was really uncomfortable because I really didn't know much about it. So I think that this business for me has brought everything under one roof for me. The financial responsibility, trying to get the loans. I learned a lot about that. Stick-to-itiveness for what what you're trying to go for is really important. And organization. The organization that I needed to have in order to be able to accomplish this. I got a lot of experience with that going through with my dad too, because at one point I did help take over all of the financial and administrative work with my dad, and as you know, he's not into one thing or two things or three things, but 1,000 things. So keeping an eye on all of the things at one time was a definite learning experience, and really did help me in where I am today, because you have to keep the whole in place. And so those are some of the reasons that I'm very grateful to my exposure because of my dad's creativity.
And what about, he would bring us a summary, of how he would see the process of fulfillment and as a personal life and a business life also. That would be about doing what's right and doing actually the right thing and doing things that would make it right and anticipating change. So how do you actually, how do you bring that concept to your life and your business?
I think you're talking about community responsibility, and that definitely is something, as I mentioned before, is important to me. My dad's always taught us that you do the right things, and it's not just for money. So we're not in business just to make money, but to help, and to give back to the communities. So I think that an example again with the shooting range and the firearms industry is what I've done, and my perspective on the shooting range is to really create a safe environment that fosters training. So we are, most places don't put the emphasis on training that we do, but it's a big part of our focus. And again, I think that's because of the responsibility of the community. And I think it's definitely well received. The other thing you asked about was
Anticipating change.
oh yeah, So that's definitely a
change.
big, right, that's a big part of success, and being able to continue on in your, in your growth. So you've always got to have your eyes open, and being able to know what direction technology is going in and thought processes. It's really important to keep an eye on that, because you have to change. Change is good. Not always necessary, but you have to make those decisions of time when it's appropriate. Sometimes change is not good, but you can't be afraid of it. You can't not change because it's a fearful, decision. You have to, maybe change wouldn't be good because it's not necessary, but change often leads us to developing, new things, and allowing people to look at things with different perspective. And that's one of my dad's biggest words, is perspective, and change allows us to do that.
And one of the things that your father would say is how much your mother would help bring balance in the family every time he wouldn't be at home. So probably, she would also bring a lot of this perspective and a way of, having yourself developed all these ways of doing business and doing your life as a mother too. And so what would you tell us about your mother in this process?
Well, my hat's off to my mom, first of all, for working with my dad. Sometimes it was difficult because, he gets focused on one thing, and he's off in one direction. And it's not easy to be the spouse of an entrepreneur. It's not easy. But she did it graciously, and she was always there with him. And I think that was, she gave me the ability to learn to be a team player. She was always part of it, and I'm so proud of what she was able to do. She didn't have the technical ability to work with a lot of technologies. So, when I took over some of her responsibilities, it was definitely a challenge. But she was always there, always a team player, and then she never took her eye off of the kids, myself and my brother. We were always, the most important thing to her, and I know that's the way I am with my kids. I could see myself doing a lot of the same things with that my mom did, and family is very, very important, and it's very often a big challenge when you're part of an entrepreneurial family, because the business is also, it's like a baby. So you stay focused on that, and because it doesn't have the ability to develop and manage itself or take care of itself, just like little kids don't. So you've added another child to the mix, as you will. But my mom was pretty amazing, and she also was able to teach me how to take on a situation that was totally new and just do it. I remember when we were scuba diving, she had such a fear of water. She was so fearful of water, but she never would not go with us. She would push herself, and she did it. So, again, I think that's something that I definitely learned from her. Don't be afraid. If it's something that you're afraid of, just, go. Just keep going, and you'll get through it, and it won't be a foreign to you, and you'll master it.
Yeah, wonderful. And there are abilities or skills that, like you mentioned, that you developed on your own that wasn't directly related to the education you had, the family education you had from your parents and your brother. And so what were those abilities, new abilities or skills that you developed, and that probably also was a learning process for the family of your own experience?
I would say organization was a huge skill level that I had to learn. especially with dealing with all the different things that Dad would do, his focus was on developing the concepts of the different businesses that he was developing, and not so much the detailed side of, organizing. So, creating the necessary, documents was, an example. Making sure that all the businesses are, documented properly and things like that. So being organized was definitely a skill that I was, that I had to develop over time to order to rein in, the vast amount of activity that was going on at the time.
And would be some of the barriers that you had to overcome, or even abilities you had to work out, like discipline or specific discipline on something, or that you had to work out in your experience?
Big one is they have to learn to manage is disagreement with the family, to be honest. We all don't always see eye to eye. So, and, it's my dad's visions and development. And so when I would disagree, I would have to learn how to, let it go. And because my position at that time working with him is to help him to develop what he's, what his goals are. So not necessarily mine. So putting aside my, my desires or suggestions, that's big. So that was a big one for me to learn.
Yeah. And now as a mother, we know that your son is also a great inventor, innovator. And so tell us a little bit about your story with your son, and how it affected his experience as a young inventor, innovator, and entrepreneur.
Well, ever since he was young, so I have two boys. My younger one,
Okay.
I work with now. He actually is my general manager at my shooting range, and he went off to school and got an accounting degree. I was really surprised that's where he went, but he understood the importance of understanding business. He probably got some of that from my dad too, as far as the importance of understanding, how business works, and understanding financials is really important. So thankfully he did that, and he brings a great deal of strength to our business because of his abilities. He's definitely an entrepreneur. He got us into rental properties when he was in early on in college, and he's gotten into lots of different things. He's very much like my dad in respect to developing relationships and then developing new business opportunities from those relationships. So he's definitely creative. Right now I'm really focused on my shooting range and getting that, where I want it to be. So, but he does that every day. He's my general manager and is there every day and stays focused on that as well. But he does, I guess his mind is maybe a little bit younger than mine at this point. So he's got the same mind my dad did. It's going off in lots of different directions, and that's fine. That's good to have lots of different things going on at one time. At one time I used to do that, but I stay focused more on one thing now.
Yeah, and also you have kind of like generation to generation have been passed this understanding of doing the right thing and things right and anticipating change. How do you think, from your perspective, he's been managing that since little boy?
Right. So both of my kids definitely have always had that in their DNA as well, if you will. Jordan has done things for the community that's very, very responsible, and I'm real proud of him. Since he's here in the same city, I can see more of that detail. And then my older son, Aaron, is also he's not as entrepreneurial. He's a little bit more scaled back in that area, but he is very focused on detail and very questions everything. And I think both my kids saw a lot of that from my dad, being able to question things and come up with solutions. So both of them are very strong in that regard, and I think that they saw that in my dad and was, very very taken with that. And I think it was definitely important for them to grow up in that kind of an environment.
Yeah, and this is interesting because, like, can you tell us a little bit about your other son? But even not being entrepreneurial, even in what he's doing, how you perceive him, as an innovator and an inventor in
Right.
what he does.
He's a very, very bright kid. And he does look at things from lots of different perspectives. Sometimes he's a really good leader too. So he's definitely stayed with learning. He went into a business that he wasn't very familiar with, and he wasn't sure if he was going to be able to, grasp it. But he's been there for 8 years and is now, a team leader. And so his concepts of developing business is basically what he's in. So he's into a marketing area as well, and it really helps. So in that regard, while he's not entrepreneurial in that, he is definitely helpful to businesses to look at different perspectives.
Wow, that's amazing. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what would be as one of the things we usually see, we could learn also from your father, is the tale of two brains. We have different natures, men and women. So having you as a woman and a great entrepreneur and an innovator and an inventor, so what advice would you give to women as a mother, as an innovator, inventor, entrepreneur, from our nature, women nature? What advice would you give in order to also bring balance, the family and the business together, and being like the pillar in the family that brings all together? So what advice, what would the lessons learned that you would bring to us?
I think I learned a lot from my mom about that. She always had to juggle family and work because she did work so closely with my dad, but yet, the kids, Dave and I, were her primary focus. I think one of the things is to evaluate your situation, and continually evaluate your situation because situations change. For example, we had my grandparents for a long time, and they were there to be able to help support my mom with my brother and I. Then at another point, they weren't there as much, so she had to make some changes and modify what she was able to do because the situation had changed. Sometimes we can create a situation that's better than other times. It's not always the best opportunities. But I remember when my kids were young and I started my travel business, I ended up working from home for the first 5 years because that worked for me. Then business got too busy and I had to really rein it in and control it better, and it was difficult to do that from home. So I eventually found a small office building that was within a couple blocks of my house, and ended up moving my business into the new building, so that it could give me opportunity to focus on my family when I was at home. So I definitely think evaluating, what's going on that's not good in your life and keeping your eyes open. I don't think that you want to just set yourself on auto drive and that's the way you go, because sometimes you need to make changes,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes that's good.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that as a mother and an entrepreneur and a business person, keeping your eyes open, and the most important thing is to see how the rest of the family is being affected, and you have to have that strength to be able to be honest with yourself and know, well, the kids are being neglected. I need to do something different, and not putting yourself first, for the most part, is a good thing. but you can't feel that you're not putting yourself first, because then you start feeling that you're giving up. But so you have to be able to put the kids first, or the husband, or the business, but not feel, the negative of that, and feel used. Once you start feeling used, you've got to make a change. That doesn't work anymore.
That's wonderful. And what is your perspective on sharing, transferring what you learned to other people and giving back, and the process of not only looking from the sharing perspective on the family, but also outside the family and friends and people that are inspired and working with you. How do you perceive that?
Well, I think that's really important to be able to do that. My current situation with my shooting range, for example, I would say that that's been a really important part of my success, is my ability to share with other people. And what I mean by that is that I've given a number of people the ability to participate in the development of this business. And these are people that are definitely have opinions about how they want to see things go, that they're professionals in what they do, and to give them the opportunity to grow. For example, instructors, they have a real dedication to imparting knowledge on students. A lot of times that's controlled or not even given that much opportunity for them to do. But I think that through sharing by me sharing the growth of this business that I've started, has really given a number of people in my business, the opportunity to feel good about themselves, to impart their knowledge, and to participate in something that's definitely better than all the individual parts. So the whole has definitely taken advantage of being able to participate, have all of these other people participate in their sharing their knowledge.
And how about in this sharing process, in your experience too, failure is being perceived as different from success, So how do you deal and manage that with yourself and with them?
I think you have to look at, well, the everybody says this, failure is an opportunity to learn. So, that's a given. But it also gives us the opportunity to evaluate if we need to make change. So, in regard to if something fails, if we continue to do the same thing over and over again, that's not a good learning, experience. We need to take ourselves out of that, that routine. And a lot of times people do that. They do, they continue to do the same things and continue to fail. So but it also does give us the opportunity to, if we believe, and this is where my dad is really, has his thought process. Failure is just another opportunity to keep pushing harder. So there's definitely two different ways of looking at it. I tend to look at it a little bit different than my dad, but I think both have merit, and I think that as long as you keep your eye on the ball and make decisions that are in the best interest of whatever is the project that you're working on, you'll be all right.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing all of your experiences and having the great opportunity of understanding how important it is when we, the foundation of loving and caring and, motivating and kind of, the parents like getting their children out and saying, try it, do it, work on it. But the foundation is very important in everything that you are bringing to us. So I think that is really fortunate for all of us and the newcomers and people that are outside. And at the end, what would you summarize to me of how you perceive what is being a successful innovation or innovation? When you look at the success of innovation, how do you look at it? How do you
Well,
perceive it?
I think successful innovation involves benefits to the community. You have to, we do have to be responsible to the community, and also benefits to the family, giving them opportunities and strength to be able to, operate on their own and create their own and make the right decisions. I think those are all benefits, and I think the love and the nurturing that you get from your family, it doesn't necessarily have to be just your biological parents, but we can create family in so many different ways. But I think that those are really, really important.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much
you very
again.
much.
It was a
Appreciate it.
pleasure. Thank
Thank
you.
you.